My name is Eliot Myles Mckinley. I am a composer and host of a web show called Composers at Home, Maybe Drinking Coffee. I am also the director of the Alba Music Festival Composition Program in Alba, Italy, which runs every year, concurrent with the Alba Music Festival, the end of May into early June. Unfortunately, this year, due to COVID-19, we had to postpone and cancel our program. However, the Alba Music Festival is continuing in a smaller online format for 2020. I am very happy to contribute several video programs for this year's online festival to represent the composition program, featuring recent and current performers, faculty, and several of the chosen 2020 composition fellows. Today I'm joined by 4 of our 2020 Alba Music Festival Composition Fellows. The fellows were all scheduled to go to Alba and have their music performed and recorded by the Borromeo String Quartet, as well as participate in lessons, masterclasses, workshops, and other festival activities. It is my pleasure to introduce these 4 young and very talented composers to you this evening: Kira Wells, Austin Franklin, Bernard Short, and Michael Grebla. And there they are. Great. Well, welcome everybody. It's like I said a little bit ago, it's a real pleasure to have all of you here. The 4 of you are representing the 2020 Composition Fellows. Unfortunately, as you all know, as we probably do not need to explain, because of COVID-19, we aren't able to be together in person. Why don't we first do a little round of short introductions where you can tell us a little bit about where you're from, where you are right now. So we'll start maybe with Austin. Austin, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hey, it's glad to be here. Glad to meet everyone again virtually. So I live in Baton Rouge currently. This semester I just graduated with my master's in music composition. I'm staying on board to pursue a PhD in experimental music and digital media. It's kind of a music but tech sort of thing. So that's a little bit about me. Yeah,
cool. Dr. Short, congratulations, Doctor.
Thank you. My name is Bernard Short. I just recently graduated with my doctoral degree, PhD in music composition. Currently teach in Atlanta, Georgia, band and orchestra, and I'm also an academic professor at Morris Brown College.
Great. Kira.
Yeah, so I live in Clearwater, Florida, which is where I am currently. I just finished the first year of my undergrad degree at the Frost School of Music at the University of Miami. So that's where I'm at.
Great. And Michael?
Hi, I'm Michael. I'm from Perth, Western Australia, very far away from where I am now. Currently in New York City. And I've been here for a couple of years. I came over to the US to do a master's in composition at the New England Conservatory in Boston. But since then I moved here and have been making the most of it.
I'm going to ask similar questions to what I ask the composers that I have on for the show that I produce, Composers at Home, Maybe Drinking Coffee. And perhaps in no particular order, the first question I'll ask is, what got you into music in the first place?
Well, I guess I can start.
Sure.
Music has always been a calling to me. My father, he played bass guitar for Rick James, and my mother, she's a classically trained pianist. So it's just been in my blood from birth. And whenever I've heard an instrument like a saxophone, it just called out to me to play it. So then when I started playing that, I got to a point where I was like, well, since Prince could play 35 instruments, I want to know how many could I learn how to play? And I wound up teaching myself how to play 20 other instruments. And then I said, well, let me start to figure out the inner workings of composing a piece. And it led me down this rabbit hole here. First to Morehouse College for my undergraduate degree, then to the University of Georgia for my master's, and then the University of Iowa for my PhD.
So basically, the background of your musical family led you to explore music a little further.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Austin, what about you? What got you into music?
I think about that question a lot. Growing up, my parents weren't that big into music. I didn't listen to a lot of it growing up. My brother in high school played the drums in the marching band, and so he told me to play drums in the marching band when I got into high school. So that's what I did, and I've just been doing it ever since. It's been falling more and more in love with it every day, and going to university for music. I wasn't even really entirely sure that that's what I wanted to do at the time that I entered anyways, but for some reason I just keep sticking around and keep dabbling in it, and just learning more and more every day. So
yeah. Michael, what about you?
How to start? I don't know. Good question. There's no musicality in my family whatsoever. I'm a total anomaly from that point of view. I guess I enjoyed singing as a kid, very young. I was very shy, so I'd sing underneath the table. My family would love it, which is great. But I think it was, we didn't get many videos when I was a kid. I got like one video most of my childhood. It was Aladdin. And so I listened to it over and over and over and over, and I just loved the music. It was great. And then I was given someone gave us a toy. It wasn't even a piano. It was like those toy keyboard instruments that are like Fisher Pike or whatever.
Yeah, Fisher Price kind of thing.
Yeah. Whatever it is. Yeah, that's right. And they had like a bunch of demos on there. And my parents were just like, he's not using like the demo track. He's just playing them like by ear. We should get him some piano lessons. And the rest of the story is very complicated. But if you ask me where it started, that's where it started.
We can mine some of that territory.
Please go ahead.
Yeah. So, and Kara, what about you? What got you into music?
Yeah, so I'm a violinist. I don't know if I mentioned that earlier or not, but so in addition to composing, I also play violin. And I've been playing now for 13 years, I want to say. And so, so that was my introduction to music. I was obviously pretty young, so I don't remember really if there was an exact inspiration or whatever. But I know when I was about 3, I think, I just one day happened to ask my parents oh, I want to learn how to play violin. So we went and sat in on, we found a local teacher and sat in on a lesson, and my parents said, oh, what do you think? And I said, never mind, that looks too hard. So I gave up on that for about 2 years, and then 2 years later, I guess I decided I was up to the challenge, thankfully. So yeah.
So the 4 of you are self-identified as composers, and it's not a thing that most kids think about. Oh, I want to be a composer. It's not it doesn't automatically become well, in rare cases, but it doesn't automatically. Oh, I want to start doing this. It's fairly esoteric. So, at what point after you start getting into music did you think that maybe you wanted to be a composer? I mean, where was that moment for you when you thought, I think I'm a composer. I think I want to study this. So I guess we'll go around. We'll start with Austin. Austin, where do you remember that moment when you thought you'd be a composer?
I do actually. So again, just dabbling in early childhood is sort of how I got my foot in the door. And my freshman year at Lamar University, where I got my undergraduate degree from, I ended up hurting my elbow playing drums, hurting my ulnar nerve.
Wow.
So I had to pretty much give up playing for, at the time, I thought it was more or less indefinitely. Turned out to only be a semester's worth of time. But so I kind of started figuring performance. I needed an alternative field of music, something. And since I'd already dabbled a little bit, I decided to pursue composition. I reached out to the professor there, Dr. Nick Rissman. And I remember my first lesson, and I brought in my portfolio of stuff, which was just a couple of little keyboard pieces, all notated, more or less half decent. And he pulled one of them out, showed it to me, played it on the piano a little bit. And then he looked at me, he said, I normally don't do this, but I wanted to change one note.
Okay.
And it was, I can't remember exactly the piece. I'm pretty sure it was in like F major, something like that. And he changed an A to an A flat somewhere, just a little dash of chromaticism. Sound just sort of opened my mind up to the possibilities. And I just remember hearing that and being like, yeah, I just want to learn exactly how you did that.
Bernard, well, you sort of started to answer that question. We know how you got into music, what your inspiration was to get into music and to sort of travel that path, maybe not so oft traveled by many people. But in terms of composition, what encouraged you to go down that road? Was there a moment, or was it just gradual?
So when I was a student at Morehouse College, I was in the HBCU marching band, and for those of you that know, that's a whole thing unto itself.
Yeah.
And I was given the opportunity to arrange a song for the band, and I arranged a song for the band, and the band director loved what I did. And hearing my piece being played halftime in the stadium, on the football field, or in the stands, it was just like the click. Because at that point in my musical journey, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know if I wanted to do performance, conducting, or composition, because I was doing classes in all three tracks.
Right.
And I remember the department chair saying, "You can't do everything. You got to go ahead and pick a side." And I was like, "No, but you need all these skills." And I was like, "He's like, yeah, you're right, but you got to pick one." And it was that moment when I arranged my first song and the band played it, and the excitement that I got from them playing my piece, I knew that's it. This is where I need to focus my attention.
Michael, what about you? What got you down this primrose path in the valley
Why
of
did
composition?
I choose Easy Street, you ask?
What's that?
I'll tell you. Why did I choose Easy Street, you ask? I'll tell you.
Why did you choose the path of least resistance?
Yeah. Yeah, good question. Look, I ask myself that question every day. No, well, I think ever since when I eventually did start getting lessons and stuff, I always enjoyed making up my own thing more than I often enjoyed playing what was on the page. But I don't know, I kind of got excited by a lot of composers at the time, and I remember being moved by like one of Beethoven's pieces, and I was just like, how cool is that? This person who's like, dead forever, basically, according to me, is like many year. I was a teenager still, right? So
yeah,
he's managed to, still be able to speak to me, but provided this means of expression for all these people, and that seems like a really cool thing. And I was a pianist and singer at the time, and at the time I felt that they were, and I think it's still kind of true, they were very solitary and isolated instruments. Like you don't really get to work with others much. It's usually you're in your little room. And then singers, like unless you're a choral singer, but I wasn't really a choral singer. I was like, I wanted to be doing like a lot more sort of virtuosic stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I just felt like it was. I felt like I didn't get to work with like all the instruments that I wanted to. Like I really loved strings and orchestra and stuff like that, but I didn't really be a conductor or a performer.
Yeah.
And then I guess as things went along, I had a lot of competing interests in my life. I still kind of do. I was very heavy into STEM. So I was actually doing a science degree for a little while. And then I switched to an engineering degree. And there was a lot of pressure from mum to like do an actual career and not what I'm doing.
Right.
Which, I think any reasonable and good parent should encourage their child to do in retrospect. So like no hard feelings there. But there was really like there was a period, and it was like my second year of my science degree, where I was just really struggling, and I'd lost my voice, and I couldn't sing for like a couple of months. And I was just like, this is important. I need to actually really like pay attention to like where I'm being pulled and what I think is important. And so I switched to a music degree in composition, and this was actually the first time I'd really properly. I mean, I made some audition pieces up, but it was the first time I actually really committed, and I haven't really looked back since. I mean, it's just been, progress bit by bit, getting there. And I had a feeling I had to get out of the country because we weren't doing necessarily the things I wanted there.
Yeah.
And so I kind of made plans to eventually come to the US, and that worked out. So.
And Kira, what about you? What got you down the path of composing?
Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, there were times in, my younger years where I, dabbled in it or whatever, but I never really enjoyed it. I don't know. I mean, I think I didn't have a lot of exposure to new music, and so I just kind of thought, oh God, there's so many rules to follow. This is boring, and I never really thought of myself as like, oh, I'm gonna, be a person who writes music. Like that was just not my thing. But then my senior year of high school, so like last year, I took theory and oral skills classes through my local community college, and like I had an amazing professor there. Shout out to Jeff Donovic. And he also taught composition, and so like my second semester, I thought I was like, oh, I'm gonna sign up for composition lessons just because whatever, I like this professor, and it'll be a useful skill to start working on or whatever. And then within like a couple weeks of taking lessons, I was like, oh, I like this. Crazy. And because by then I've had a lot of friends who are composers for a long time before that. And so I had started, getting more exposure to new music and stuff, and actually realizing like what the possibilities were. And so after, taking lessons just for a short period of time, I was like, oh, like I could actually do this. And of course that was, in the middle of my senior year. So I was already in the process of applying to schools and stuff, not for composition. But I, when I got to Frost for my audition day there, like I'd initially applied, with the intention of doing a double major in just like general music and psychology. But then on my audition day there, I just kind of like, it was honestly kind of an impulse decision. I just went to the, admissions office or whatever, and I was like, hey, would it be possible to like switch my application to a BM in composition? And they were like, if you can get a portfolio together in 2 days, sure. And I was like, yeah, totally. When I didn't really have anything, but I threw together some crap in a weekend, and apparently they liked it enough, so here I am.
And there you are. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, your teacher Lansing is a very good friend of mine, and also an extraordinary composer. And if Lansing's seal of approval, if he heard something in you, then then that says something. Okay, so he's here. He definitely hears. He heard something in your portfolio. There are eight others who are not, unfortunately, here. I couldn't interview everybody, and other people had some conflicts, so I couldn't get more in on the call. But I'm very happy that the four of you are here. What inspired you to apply for Alba?
The cheese and wine.
Okay, fair enough. You've got it.
So I have yet to have an international experience. I've never left the country. So applying for summer festivals, composition opportunities is a great, more or less inexpensive, and also opportunistic way to do that. Alba was one of the only ones that I found that had a program overseas somewhere, and I love Italy just from pictures that I've seen. I know people, family, friends who have been there who say it's great. So didn't see why not to apply.
Sure. Do you have any thought, sort of pre-thought about what such an experience might give you? I mean, beyond. And you mentioned cheese and wine, and you will absolutely, I promise you, have amazing wine and amazing cheese and amazing ice cream known as gelato and amazing. I mean, I could go on, and I'll tell you a little bit about every interview that I've done. Seems to always come full circle around to Italy, in the sense that the Italians have figured out something about living life that it's why we keep going there. It's not that other places aren't beautiful. There are plenty of other places that are beautiful and have great food. I mean, but somehow the Italians have sort of assembled it in a way that is just makes us all want to go back. But beyond that, Austin, did you have anything that you were thinking that you might gain from such an experience professionally?
I mean, just in terms of compositional process. So I've been transitioning more to being influenced by visuals, paint, landscapes, things like that, in a way that I hadn't previously. So you see call for scores and summer festivals for like Let's Compose in the Mountains Together 2020. That something about just a brand new experience, cultural experience, as a way to influence me compositionally, to expand my worldview in some unforeseeable way.
Great. Bernard, do you want to? I know you've already been to Alba, so you do have the benefit of knowing more or less what you're going into. Of course, with some different cast of characters. But I suppose maybe since you've done Alba, you've done other programs before, maybe address it from both what you have got out of a program like Alba, and then what you were hoping maybe to get further out of going again in 2020 and now next year, 2021.
Well, when I was in my PhD program, I had the benefit of going to the Midwest Composers Symposium, and that think tank of composers, talking with them and being exposed to them, being inspired, and learning things and being exposed to things that I have no previous knowledge of. I know that happened to me just here in the States. So I wanted to broaden my horizons and go to other countries and experience other cultures and allow those other cultures to inspire me to do other pieces. So like when I went to Greece, I created a whole piece based off of the island Apollo was supposed to have was born off of,
Mm-hmm.
and it was because of that trip that I was able to do that. So going to Alba, to me, presented an opportunity where, in addition to getting my music performed, I actually get to have master classes with respected composers in the industry that could possibly help me further evolve.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really what it's all about. And then this year you added electronic music component,
Mm-hmm.
and me, electronic music, that's my cocaine. Like I can sit in front of Pro Tools for 200 hours and be like, yeah, and not have no problems with that.
Mm-hmm.
So when you added that component, I was like, oh, I have to experience this, because all it's going to do is just further evolve me as a composer.
Mm-hmm. Michael, what were you hoping to get out of such a program, and what have you gotten out of programs past, if you've gone to other programs?
Sure. No, I have been to a few to
Mm-hmm.
I guess answer that question. So when I came over to the US, I didn't know about festivals. We don't really do them like you guys do, or Europe does, because we're in the other hemisphere, so we don't have summer like you do.
Mm-hmm.
So that entire concept was very foreign to me, and it was only after I got back from my first summer at school, where everyone's just like, so where were you this summer? What were you doing? Like, what festivals? I'm like, what the hell are these festivals you're talking about? So I was kind of late to that game, actually. And then I went to my first one, which was Zodiac Festival in France, and that was great. I think the main thing is, and why I go to these, it's a really important way to begin to understand the community that you're operating in, and to build relationships. And that's with performers, but also with teachers. You kind of realize that a lot of people who sit in these faculty of whatever festivals, they also, it's not that big of a community, but the second people who sit on a lot of the grants, a lot of the prizes, you kind of have to get vaguely known, and make some good impressions, and get your music in front of some people. I think the other part is, as far as my business model goes, I think it's very important to have a very broad reach as a composer. If you want to make a go of this career, you need to have a lot of relationships internationally, so that you're always going to have little pockets of support or things happening. So for me, that's an important part of why I try to do this, and it usually introduces me to new audiences and new performers, and that's great. In terms of Alba, so when I was at NEC, we had Borromeo as they are the resident.
Right.
And I was just like total fanboy. And my teacher wrote for them. And I'm like, I'm gonna write for them one day. And this festival came up where you can write for them, and I was just like, sign me up. But then also, it's Italy, which is like my mother country, and I have family there, and I haven't had my debut in Italy yet, and I would have loved to have. I mean, to have had Borromeo perform my work is just like A-Team, and that's like my first piece in my sort of the motherland, and I was just like,
Kira, what about you in terms of why you applied for a program like Alba, and what you thought or still think what you would get out of it?
Yeah. So, I mean, honestly, initially the main reason I applied to Alba was because I am stuck taking a math class over the summer. So I had a period of about 6 weeks right smack in the middle of the summer where I couldn't do anything. So, I had to kind of limit my search to short festivals, either at the very beginning of the summer or at the very end. So this, obviously fit that. And, but I mean, Alba specifically was recommended to me by Dr. McCloskey, who, of course, spoke of it very highly. And then, when I was looking at the program, like, I was immediately very excited about it once I saw that Borromeo was going to be the ensemble in residence, because I was like, oh my gosh, like, I've been listening to their recordings for years, you know, as a string player myself. Like,
Yeah, right.
you know, I've heard like everything they've played. So to write for them would be cool. So that, you know, that was definitely a big draw too.
Yeah. Austin, what was the reason for the existence of your work? How did that come to fruition?
So my undergraduate school didn't have a string program. So it was always my dream going into grad school to write string quartet, orchestra piece, all of these things that utilize a lot of string players. So my first couple of semesters at Louisiana State, I did all of those things. I could never find it in me to write a string quartet. For whatever reason, I couldn't find the right material, something that I liked, et cetera, et cetera. So I struggled with this took me 3 years to get my master's degree. So for 3 years, struggled to write a string quartet piece. And I was in the middle of writing it when I got the acceptance letter to Alba. So it just so happened to work out perfectly that I was writing this big one that I've been struggling writing for a while. So this piece is a pretty special to me in that way. And I overcame a lot of compositional challenges and had some new musical perspectives that I had never had before. So it was a great opportunity to then get accepted to this festival with this piece.
Is there any meaning to the title, to the subtitle of the piece?
Yeah, so the piece was inspired by a poem by Stephen Crane. He wrote a bunch of short poems. He also wrote The Red Badge of Courage, what he's most well known for. So in this poem, the title of the poem is Each Small Gleam Was a Voice. And throughout the poem, he makes these comparisons between light and sound, sort of metaphors. He's incapable. It's almost kind of like he's struggling to describe things. He's using sight for sound, and so there's this kind of tension between what we're hearing and what we're seeing, or what we're reading and what we're supposed to be imagining in our heads. So I kind of wanted to do something like that musically. So for me, the sort of imagery of light was something that I relied heavily upon in the music. So the title of the work, and I just submitted one movement to Alba, but it's called Lanterns. When the marvelous chorus comes over the water, song Carmine, Violet, Green, and Gold. So this chorus, I kind of took that literally, like simultaneous. So there's this part where they're all, through the entirety of the movement, all of the string players are staggered. They're all playing eighth notes. But they're all staggered with their entrances and exits. And then at the very end of the movement, they all come together with the chorus together. The meaning of that title in reference to the poem.
So, Michael, you mentioned earlier that, of course, it was something of a dream to be able to write for an ensemble like the Borromeo. Do you have some backstory to your piece, or anything you want to say about the music?
Yeah, yes. As far as the meaning goes, the title of the quartet is Fede, which is faith.
Mm-hmm.
I made a habit of naming each of these quartets in Italian, and I think it's part of. I know I was reflecting on it. I was reflecting on my experience coming to the US, but also my my mum's experience, my family's experience
Mm-hmm.
coming from Sicily, and I was
Mm-hmm.
realizing it's important for me to keep that culture going and the
Yeah.
language part of it and
Yeah.
part of who I am. And interestingly, a lot of the words that I've used in Italian to name, like my first quartet, Sudare, is
Mm-hmm.
actually also Romanian for the same word, basically. So it's like
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
both of the cultures intersect. So I was just
Right.
like, nice.
Right.
So why this was called Faith? Honestly, the work deals with a lot. There's a good amount of grief in there. There's a good amount of healing and sorrow and despair.
Mm-hmm.
It was written some months after some enormous tragedies in our family
Okay.
and a period of enormous uncertainty in my life,
Mm-hmm.
where things were very hopeless.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of just learned to have this concept of faith that things will somehow work out, even though you can't see how that's going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Kira, do you have some backstory or thoughts about your piece?
Yeah. So I actually have, for this piece, I have a very specific backstory, which is not usually the case for me. But this piece was actually based on something that happened to me about 6 months now. 6 months ago, I guess. So I usually, since I live in Florida, on the other side of Florida from school, I usually take the train back and forth between home and school when I go home for breaks and stuff. And so I was, I guess it was when I was on the train home for Thanksgiving break last semester, my train hit a car, and which killed 3 people, which was obviously, obviously it's not like I was the, victim there, but it was still,
right,
an emotional event. And so I, of course, I'm a composer, so what am I going to do when something dramatic happens? It's music time. So so it's this piece is the first movement of what I'm now working on, expanding it into a 3-movement work. And so this first movement is kind of it's mostly kind of taking that, like, the moment of impact and the surrounding moments and kind of expanding it into those 5 minutes, and just because at the time, it's not like we didn't find out until a little while later as passengers that it was a car, and then later that there were 3 fatalities and 2 of them were children, and so it's this first movement is just kind of the that moment and the kind of confusion and chaos surrounding it.
So Bernard, what was the reason or backstory for your piece?
This piece is the maturation of my journey, or my introduction into atonality. Coming up throughout my academic climb, I was the dude in the class like, oh my God, why we have all of these rules? And it was just, because I wanted to like, okay, let's learn a rule. Now, can I break them? Why can't I break them? What do you mean I can't break them? And it was annoying. And then I was introduced to Structural Functions of Harmony by Arnold Schoenberg. And I was like, yes. And because I mean, Schoenberg was like the ultimate rebel. And he was like, yeah, this is what it's supposed to do. But no, we're going to make it do this because this is what I wanted to do. And I was like, thank you. And then from there, I was introduced to Bartok, the 6 string quartets. And those string quartets had such a big influence on me. And Dr. Gumper was explaining to me, like, what I have to do is I have to pull off the Band-Aids and go into those raw emotions of what I'm doing at the moment. And I remember being in my private lesson with him, like, I'm not trying to do that. That's I'm not supposed to show those types of that weakness. I'm supposed to keep those feelings hidden and this I'm a man image forth, right? Because we're not supposed to have feelings. And he was like, we understand that, but the fact of the matter is those are where your greatest pieces of music will come from. I didn't want to listen to them, but I did. And the feelings that I was dealing with was unease. Thus, the title Disquietude came to me. And so what I was attempting to do was to reflect the raw emotions of uneasiness and anxiety. And as a result of the inspiration of the piece became an exploration of ordered states and disordered states. Throughout the piece, I explored transformations from united state of sound to deviation of musical ideas, rhythmic syncopation, then going to density of sound, and then going to the isolation of silence.
So I'm going to ask each of you a little bit about what you're working on now and what some of your, say, short, medium, long-term plans are. So Austin?
Currently, transitioning into a new degree program. I'm doing a lot of stuff with MaxMSP and Jupyter and Node.js, a lot of stuff in that realm. So I have some projects that I'm working on this summer. Instrumental, though I'm finishing up a wind ensemble piece right now. It's a arrangement from one of my earlier piano pieces a couple years ago.
Bernard, what's on your docket for the next short, medium, long term?
Right now, I'm trying to go ahead because I'm working as an adjunct professor at Morris Brown, so I'm seeking full-time tenure track positions as we speak. And then in addition to that, I'm also looking into, I'm going to go ahead and composing a brand new piece for Alba 2021. And I kind of have an idea of starting to sketch that out actually tomorrow. Kind of have an idea of where I'm going to go with it.
Michael, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of things up in the air, which are going to really determine what the medium and long term look like. But what I would say is, I mean, music-wise, I've taken this time where, I mean, I had a program as everyone else did, which got completely obliterated by COVID.
Yeah.
So I've taken the time to go through a lot of my catalog and basically put together like this online library of everything. It was like programs, scores, recordings, redownload videos, getting that all up there, which is good. And then I'll be starting work on a series of solo piano works, hopefully very soon. I'm just thinking strategy-wise, you know, people aren't going to be able to do much in performance spaces. It's going to have to be small numbers. Money-wise, it's easier to do like recitals than it is to do, you know, quartets or orchestras and stuff like that. It's lower risk. So I'm kind of putting my energy there at the moment. And then, I mean, next year we'll see. Like it's just very unclear at the moment.
Right.
But I'll keep you updated.
Sure.
MichaelGrebla.com.
Good job. Good job. Get that in there. Get the plug in there. Kira, what about you?
So for the, you know, immediate future, like I mentioned, I'm working on expanding the string quartet. So that's been my main project lately. But then I'm also now over the summer, I'm lucky to have a very good friend who is an amazing percussionist who's home all summer with a 5-octave marimba. So we're going to be collaborating this summer, and I'm writing a solo percussion piece for her. So that's my next kind of immediate project.
So thank you all for joining me tonight, and I wish you all the best of luck as you go forward in your endeavors for the summer. And it was a real pleasure to spend some time with you and share some of your music. Once again, I wish to thank today's guests, composers Kira Wales, Austin Franklin, Michael Grebla, and Bernard Short. I would also like to thank Jeff Soberschlag, Giuseppe Nova, and the entire staff of the Alba Music Festival Composition Program for making this festival such a warm and welcoming place for all of our program fellows, faculty, and guest artists over these past 5 years. We look forward to next year when we surely hope we can all be together again in person as part of the 18th edition of the Alba Music Festival and the 6th edition of the Composition Program. "2021 is set to be a great year for the program and will feature Hub New Music as the ensemble in residence, along with Hannah Lash as the composer in residence. Our distinguished faculty includes Mary Ellen Childs, David Post, and J. Anthony Allen, who will also run an electronic and electroacoustic mini course that will run concurrently with the composition program. Guest artists will include jazz guitarist and composer Barry Finnerty, who recorded with Miles Davis and was a founding member of the Brecker Brothers Band. Musicologist and guitarist Enrico Merlin, who is one of the leading Miles Davis scholars, will visit as well, and composer and multidisciplinary instrumentalist Alex Lubet, who is professor of composition at the University of Minnesota Twin Cities, will attend and give several lectures. Applications will open later in the summer of 2020. Please visit www.albacomposition.com for more information. Also, visit our page on Facebook/Alba Composition and Instagram @Alba Composition. We thank you very much for taking the time to watch today's program, and we wish all of you to remain happy, healthy, and safe.